real pleasure to have in studio with us today the outgoing superintendent of schools and the incoming superintendent of schools for Clinton. Of course, we're talking about Gary DeLacy and Wes Golden. Gary, let's get started with you. You wanted to reflect about these 7 years.
Yeah, and obviously, as I'm approaching the end of my tenure here, you always start to do some reflections and things. So, one of the things when I came to the district, the facilities really were very impressive overall. But I still remember in my first month, Greg Cornelison coming into my office and say, "What are you going to do about Clinton High School?" And then took me through the bowels when you get on some of the places that people never get to see at Clinton High School underneath, and the pipes that would be breaking every other week, and we, of course, you wouldn't know right away, and it was the mud hole down there, and just like, okay, the building has served us well. It's at that point approaching 100 years old. We really need to do something. So I actually think one of the key things in my 7 years was developing the task force. And I give that task force a lot of credit in terms of carrying the message, talking to people. And I'm going to name a few people, and I want to make sure I don't miss anybody, so Wes, help me. But I'm probably going to forget somebody here, so it's not intentional. But Julie Lonergan was the chair of that committee, and I thank her leadership on that. I think of Brian Veenstra, who really took a lot of pride in terms of targeting who we needed to target for that campaign. I'm thinking of Dennis Lawver. I'm thinking of Andy Ferguson. I'm thinking of Brent Albertson. I'm thinking of Aaron George. And I'm knowing Amanda AC was kind of a marketing person. I'm still missing a couple people.
Was Scott Levine involved with that?
Scott Levine was involved a little bit with that group as well. There was like a core group of 8 or 9, and I'm missing a couple, and I apologize. I'm going off the top of my head on that. You know who you are. That core group of 9 people in that task force really did a great job. And, when you get 74.7% on that bond issue, I don't care where you are in the state of Iowa, and the burden is 60% plus 1. I mean, so, it's one of the few times where 40% you're the winners in a bond issue. And to do it that way, I give kudos to that group. But then just the process that we've went through, that was early March. 2 weeks later, we hit the pandemic. Then the next 14 months, we've went ahead and did the designs, eventually get a low bid. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, our budget got set higher than we initially projected. And when that's one of the things I will say is we're on budget. It's just that our budget started higher because of where we locked in. But I think people were very pleased with phase 1. I still walk through phase 1. I actually talked to a number of seniors this year, and I said, "Well, do you miss the old building?" And they looked, "No." So, there's things there with the 21st century, natural light. We did lockers and banks. We don't have those lockers in the hallways. We use tile instead of block on the side, so it really gives it a more professional feel. We carpeted it so it's more quiet. I mean, when you actually go through there, I'll be honest, with the 3 floors, it really kind of splits up the student body in a way that it just doesn't seem busy. And then it's just state-of-the-art technology and everything. So from a facilities perspective, bringing the high school on board with really where all the other facilities are. Right now, when that high school's done in the next year and a half to 2 years, Clinton can pretty much say our facilities can stand up against anybody in the state in 4A, anybody. And so, when you throw that in, that we've been able to upgrade where our alternative high school is, we were able to get that graphic arts center. And we now call that the Educational Advancement Center. But I think for those kids to feel valued, and get into a newer building that really meets their needs. And you know, I walked through that building near the end of the year. The kids have really done a nice job of taking care of it. They've actually, and I've talked to the teachers. The kids were just taking a lot of pride, like, "Hey, we're valued." And that's kind of a lot of times people say, "Well, does the facility make a difference?" It does make a difference, especially with climate and attitude. Mm-hmm. And then probably my last shout out is to the transportation department. You know, we bought a DOT building, which was nice, but you could never pull a bus in there. And when I initially started in the winter, when you have half of the bus hanging out in the middle of the winter and we're trying to work on the bus, it was like, this is the worst working conditions in the district. And to get now a bus barn that we can pull, we have 3 full service bays, we have a wash bay, will actually save the taxpayers money in the long run, because we're going to be able to do a much better job of maintaining vehicles, having a facility to do that. So.
And while we're talking about buses, I want to ask Wes, as he's going to be retiring, of course, but I know he's a capable bus driver. Are we going to be able to talk him out of retirement to do some routes occasionally?
He likes driving those buses, so I think it's a great opportunity for him to stay engaged, but still have the flexibility to go do his thing when he wants to go do his thing. So we've talked a lot about that.
Okay, well, that is good that you have talked about that. Academic enhancements. Talk a little bit about that, Gary.
Well, and I'm going to have Wes talk a little bit, because this has kind of been in his area a little bit. I'll talk the first one I sort of brought to the district was Synergy. It was actually originally Iowa Big, and we got that out of Cedar Rapids. I really thought it was authentic learning. I really thought this is the way we should be transitioning forward. I think the pandemic kind of put a little damper on the development of that, but I think we are getting some of that back as well. I'll let Wes go through some of the rest of those things in terms of the academic area, since he was the current curriculum director.
Yeah, all right. Well, I mean, there's a lot, and Gary's been a driving force for many of the things that we've been doing. You know, already mentioned EAC, brought in IJAG as a program that has been really helpful for our at-risk students as well, and it kind of gives a great platform for the kids who maybe don't want to go or need to go to EAC, but still need that extra, support. So IJAG's been a great example of that. Gary was a driving force between the CTE program with Clinton Community College and their center that they've just built in the last couple years. So the list is long. We've been moving hard, and in large part due to Gary's vision.
Every one of those programs are very interesting. The Synergy, you've seen what they've done in the community with various projects, but IJAG, talk a little bit more about that. I'm not real familiar with that program.
So IJAG is a program, it's really state funded, and most, I wouldn't say most, many districts are starting to implement IJAG, and it's really a program that helps students who are at risk, but it really can be any student for that matter, but it helps provide them the extra supports they need in developing those tools, not necessarily fully academic, but more 21st century, as they say, or soft skills, to help them really grow into a future-ready participant in our society. What we're seeing is that 100% of our students are graduates, and really that's what it's for, those students who potentially are at risk of dropping out.
How do they participate in that, Wes? I mean, is it a physical building that they go to? Is it online? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a class within the school. So we've got a couple of instructors who that's their full job, that they work for IJAG. They don't really work for the Clinton Community School District. So it's a program through a state-funded initiative that brings those instructors in to help give them and those students those extra supports to develop those skills so they can graduate and go on and be productive members of our community.
And I think another great thing is what Clinton High and the other area high schools are doing with Clinton Community College.
Yeah, and that will be an initiative I continue. In fact, I would like to make that CTE program whether it's Comanche or Northeast or DeWitt, any of our community or our county schools is inspiring and motivating our students to get into some of these career pathways. And it's also in partnership with CCC, or Eastern Iowa Community College, to develop the pathways that help support economic growth in our community. So it's how do we develop the programs that our community needs and get the students in those programs so that when they graduate, they're ready. They can go on either to more technical training, or they can go right into the workforce and support our community and economic growth.
Again, visiting with Wes Golden as well as Gary DeLacy. We're going to be taking a break for the weather here in just a minute, but structural changes, let's talk a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, before, there's one thing I should have put on the list I want Wes to talk about before we get to structural changes: Portrait of a Graduate, which is a major initiative.
Okay, let's talk about that, and then we'll take the break for the weather. Go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, Portrait of a Graduate will obviously it has to continue because it's interwoven into many of our programs already. But we've had an amazing, but also very, it's been a strenuous journey, simply because we were trying to adopt this through COVID. And getting our community partners involved and letting us know what it is truly our kids need to be able to know or do when they graduate, so they can become effective and contributing members of our community. And these are really what we're finding, and what we know is that, hey, we can teach kids math, but honestly, they need to know how to be adaptable. They need to understand how to collaborate. They need to understand how to be accountable, and integrating those topics or competencies within our already established curriculum has been critical. We're going to continue on with this so that we can help support our community and providing competent students to be a member of our community and workforce.
You know, life skills are so important. It's amazing, isn't it?
Wow, I give Gary a hard time, when we talk about, because I taught physics and he taught math, and, I always talk about so Gary, I want to know, when's the last time you've used the quadratic formula?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the point of it is it's not necessarily that understanding the quadratic formula is the most important thing, but it's really using the skills that you learn while learning the quadratic formula, about trying to solve a problem, and working your way through hard things. And when some things might be ambiguous to you, how do you make them more clear, and having those tools in your toolkit so when you're in the workforce, your boss doesn't have to hold your hand.
Let's take a break for the weather. It is brought to you by Van's Carpet Corner.
Still going to see a warm one this afternoon with highs around 90 degrees, expecting some peaks of sun here and there through clouds. But we're also going to continue to see that boundary sitting up around our hometowns, and that continues to train in a couple of isolated showers and storms as we head through the afternoon and evening hours. Tonight, we should dry skies out a little bit more for us, temperatures staying very mild for us in the low 70s. We'll bring back a bit more sunshine for Friday. Highs boost to the mid-90s. I'm Storm Track 8 meteorologist Morgan Strackby.
Still kind of overcast, 75 degrees. Our update brought to you by Van's Carpet Corner.
Just in at Van's Carpet Corner and in stock, heavyweight luxury carpets. Plus, get new rolls of multicolored carpeting installed over pads starting at just $245 a square foot. 3 colors of luxury vinyl plank, $319 a square foot until gone. Carpet and vinyl remnants for as low as 99 cents a square foot. Material only, and get closeout prices on all in-stock vinyl plank. Hurry in for these big savings at Van's Carpet Corner, 1430 10th Avenue in Fulton. Phone 815-208-7020.
Going to wrap up the program now. We go into the final segment of FYI. Again, Gary DeLacy and Wes Golden in studio with us. So we've got some structural changes. That is the talking point there?
Yeah, over the last 7 years, some of the things that I think have made a big difference. One, and this actually was one of the more controversial things, or at least I got a lot of parent input on it. We actually, after my first year, we flipped the elementary and secondary starting times. And to me, the research shows, and now that I've driven the bus, I will tell you, Gary, who's more awake in the morning? It tends to be the kindergartners. And we actually had them starting after the high school kids, who are, I'll be honest, at 7 in the morning, pretty much asleep. So just reversing that, I'll be honest, at least from the elementary perspective, I think has been huge. Because the other thing is those elementary kids by about 2 in the afternoon are tired. And in our old schedule, they had to go to 3:40. And the teachers my first year are like, we still got an hour and a half, and the kids are beat.
Yeah.
And now just reversing that, now they're getting out basically an hour earlier. So when it hits 2 o'clock, they can say, can we get another 40 minutes out of them? I think that's a little bit better. I also think it's good for the secondary kids because their alarm clocks are different and they should start a little bit later. I think the other big structural change was moving the middle school and the high school to the 7-period day. That put them back on semesters, because when we were running a trimester schedule, you were always having a 12-week block of time where kids, there was 3 different 12-month blocks. So, for example, you might have math first try and third try, but the 12 weeks in the middle, no math. That to me was like building in another summer. And so you always hear about the summer regression and that. Well, now we have summer and we had a built-in regression. I think being able to eliminate that and having instruction of the cores over 180 days. And I would also argue the fine arts. How are you a band kid, but you're in band only 2 out of those 3, and you're trying to it'd be like having a football team, but you're only going to have 2/3 of your team at any given point because of the way we were scheduling it. So I think some of those structural changes were good for kids, and hopefully good for academic achievement.
I want to get both of your opinions on this because you both, of course, got started in the classroom, but now are in an administrative role. How do you take what you learned as a classroom teacher into administration? Wes?
Well, I think both Gary and I spent quite a lot of time in the classroom. I mean, there are administrators who, only have taught for a few years and then go directly into administration. I think Gary and I both, and I'm speaking for him, but we both consider ourselves teachers first, and always taking those lessons we've learned from the classroom, but also maintaining relationships with the teachers and having, having their feedback constantly always considered helps us understand what decisions need to be made, because they're key stakeholders in what we do. So I think for me, and speaking for Gary, being a teacher first is always, I think, really important for all administrators to take in mind.
And of course, you're going to be stepping into the role of superintendent. Some of these changes, how much of a role did you have to play in that now before?
Well, Gary's always encouraged input, and many, at least the academic ones, I had significant input in. Often it's decision by committee, not necessarily by individual. What I've always appreciated about Gary is he's a visionary. He truly has a focus on the long-range plan, and then how do we get going towards that plan. So bringing those key folks in is always important so that you have buy-in.
We've got about 8 minutes left in the program. I knew we were going to have a hard time trying to get everything in here, but appreciate you both coming in this morning. Let's talk about the finances.
Yeah, and we'll start speeding this along a little bit. One of the things I've been very proud of is that we're in financially pretty strong position, given in challenging times, and I give a lot of credit to that to Cindy McAleer, who's our school business official. I've worked very closely with her, but one of her major concerns when I came 7 years ago was our increasing special ed deficit, and we've been able to keep our quality special ed services, but get our staffing in line to the point. She would tell you we're building the high school for the same cost that we were actually levying to do the special ed deficit. And I think where that really shows is that we've dropped about $1.20 on our overall levy over the last 4 years. So we're building a high school at $2.70, and we still have been able to drop it $1.20. So, obviously if we weren't building the high school, that would really look significant, but I think we're getting a great return on investment. I know Wes will continue to work closely with Cindy on that we maintain high quality programming, and we're doing it from a strong financial position.
Very important, no doubt about that. Community partnerships.
And I'm going to let Wes talk a little bit about this. This has been a major priority for me, but I know just talking to him, this is going to be a major focus for him moving forward. So I'm going to let him talk on that.
Yeah, one of the key things that Gary has been, but I also have been championing is rebuilding and strengthening our partnerships with families, but also local businesses and industries. That's all part of the Portrait of a Graduate. This is all part of work-based learning, because what we know now is the world we're living in is different than it was when you and I and Gary went to school. So it's providing students those opportunities to learn in authentic environments. And so having those partnerships with our local businesses and industries, but having parental support and getting students out there to see, I always call it, I'm at the point where I'm demanding these partnerships, because why wouldn't we want to have those partnerships to, I call it it gives street credibility. As a teacher, if I say, hey, this is how it works in the real world, students roll their eyes and say, yeah, teach, okay, I got you. But when somebody in their working or their job shadowing and they're interning with somebody who says, this is how it works in the real world, it's like, oh, I should probably listen because these folks are doing it. So those partnerships are critical, and we'll continue to work towards that.
How do the businesses accept that relationship?
I think there are many who are open to it. It's just how. I think that's the question, and one of the things we need to do better going forward, and we've been working on this the last year, is really getting our arms wrapped around all of our initiatives, but educating our community about what these opportunities have and where could they fit. What is the right amount of time and expectation that a business or an industry partner could provide. Doing an internship's way different than just job shadowing. But, whether it's CTE, you name it, we need to just educate and then and help folks understand what we need and how they can be a part of it.
This area, of course, is so industry based, and that's what Clinton really kind of grew, that the railroad, ADM, then Clinton Corn.
Yeah.
So getting these people involved with the students is very critical.
Absolutely. To me, I asked them, wouldn't you want to have a say in how we educate our students so that they can be ready for their future? And that's kind of the phrase I've been using is future ready. We used to use that catchphrase, college and career ready. But what we're seeing, and it's always been kind of this way in Clinton, the vast majority of our students, they do go to maybe a trade school or a tech school. They're going to go to maybe some community college, but a lot of them go directly into the workforce. So what better way to educate our students than to get authentic learning from the folks that they might be working with in the near future?
Very good, very good. Capital campaign for the Arts Center.
Yeah, I had mentioned that through the pandemic, the price tag on the high school where we had to start, we are on budget, but part of our budgeting process to make up that shortfall was a capital campaign, which we're kicking off for the Performing Arts Center. There was some value engineering recommendations of eliminating some things that I thought were essential for that orchestra pit, fly space, state-of-the-art, audio, visual, and I didn't want to compromise our theater when we're competing against the Quad City schools. So some of this is about attraction, keeping families to stay in Clinton because we're offering those kinds of facilities. So fortunately, we got $450,000 from the CCDA, which was a huge help. We're running a small capital campaign of about $300,000. So if people are out there, we're going to have a donor board that recognizes those contributions, and we're taking those over a 3-year period. So if people want a budget or organizations want a budget, I've also went out along with members of the boosters. It's the band boosters that are actually running this to get us to the finish line. So we're hopeful that people will step up. That theater will be finished hopefully in December. And then the donor board actually won't go up for probably another year because that donor board's actually part of phase 3, which is the what I would call the grade area or the cafeteria, which will actually be where you would enter into that theater, but it'll also swale into your gym.
Okay, kind of putting a cap on the program. Of course, you taught, but you and I both walked the halls as students at Clinton High School. I graduated in '72, so I got into the building after the fire. My sophomore year, the first semester, I was over at Washington Junior High School and then going over to the shops and of course, the gym. What are your thoughts of what Clinton High is going to be looking like?
Well, it's going to be a modern facility, a modern, I call it opportunity, a learning opportunity for kids. So, I graduated a few years after you, but it's quite an upgrade. When I taught at Clinton High for 20 years, I was in a room that had no light, like no natural light. I lived in a cave for 20 years. Just having that natural light and being able to see the sun in the winter when, there are times where I would go to school in the dark and then leave in the dark. Just having that, it provides a much more, positive environment. But having a great facility, and I agree, kind of coming full circle, the Clinton Community School District has outstanding facilities, and that's due to a lot of work and vision and planning from the people before me. We have athletic facilities that are second to none. We have buildings that are second to none. And then we need to do our part as the human component of building those relationships, having high expectations and academic standards to take kids to the next level.
Well, I'm looking forward to visiting with you every third Thursday as we get into the season. And besides driving bus, how are things looking for you in your retirement, Gary?
Well, I need purpose yet, so I said it would be my sweet spot would be find something 20, 25 hours a week, ability to vacation when I want, and not take the job home with me. So one of the things I'm looking forward to is not having my cell phone ring at 2 or 3 in the morning.
All right.
And going from there. So I do want to thank the Clinton community for the support over my 23 years teaching, coaching, and as a superintendent.
All right, thank you both for coming in today. I appreciate it.
To AM 1340 KROS, Clinton, Iowa.
FM 105.9.
And KROSradio.com.
This is Radio Iowa. The state medical examiner says foul play was not a factor in the death of a Western Iowa truck driver who disappeared last year. More details in the autopsy of 53-year-old David Schultz of Wall Lake will be released later this week. But so far, they say it was not a homicide. Schultz's body was discovered in a field in April, 5 months after his abandoned truck was found on a rural Sac County highway.